Hi guys. Okay, so this is part 2 for Friday, week 8. And what I have open here is the file for the Goose Girl. Again, like I said in the last video, be sure you've read it at least once so that when I go over it a little quick today, you have a good idea of what I'm talking about. You won't have to go back and reread. Like I've been saying, if you have any questions about this, let me know. So, to start out with, keeping in mind what I had covered in part 1 with the European folk tales, with the expectations of what makes a fairy tale, I'm opening them up on another monitor so I can quickly reference these. What we have here in the opening paragraph, the intro paragraph, you have the establishment of the secure environment for the protagonist. You're also introduced to the protagonist right away. You can recognize her because instantly she is the beautiful one. She is a beautiful daughter. Again, typically, more often than not, the beautiful character is the identifiable one. She is, in this case, she will be the protagonist. In this case, she's living with her mother, an old queen. Now, despite the fact that her father has died away, and he's been dead for many years, the daughter is happy. She's had no conflict. She has had no moment of harm or restrictions placed upon her. She's had plenty of food, plenty of money. She's surviving quite nicely. She is the stereotypical princess figure. Now, the inciting moment where you know conflict is going to start packing up is when you learn that she has to depart for a distant kingdom. She has to go on a journey. So she has to move from point A to point B. This is where you know the plot is going to follow that traditional pyramid of conflict. Okay. The mother in this case is not evil, unlike Snow White, unlike Cinderella, unlike Sleeping Beauty. In this case, the mother, the birth mother, is of quality, of moral quality. And so, because this is a contractual marriage, the princess has no clue who her husband is or what to expect of him. That's where you get the first point of conflict. So the queen packs up for her the dowry type information or elements, the gold, the silver, the vessels, the trinkets, everything. Okay. And most importantly, the first paragraph closes out with a line with the phrase, "For the queen loved her child with all her heart." And that just confirms the whole notion that this child is leaving a secure environment. Okay, now, there is a slight stalling process of identification for the antagonist. The antagonist in this story develops and grows and more wicked and more antagonistic as the story progresses, and that is the chambermaid. When she's first introduced, you have no qualities, no physical descriptions at all, which is forcing more of an identification to the princess, because the princess is beautiful, the princess has golden hair, the princess is young, the princess is meek, whereas the actions of the chambermaid, who's lower class, her actions are quickly identifiable as antagonistic. Okay, they both are given a horse for the journey, And that's where you learn about the first indication of magic, and that's Falada, the speaking horse. Now, his magic is rather limited. He only talks under certain circumstances. There's no rhyme or reason what these circumstances are. In fact, he talks probably at the worst times possible. But again, if you think about it as a story, the plot requires a delay in aid to the princess. Okay? If the horse reveals information of violence and conflict to anyone on the journey to the new castle, or if he talks about how bad the chambermaid is treating the princess to the residents of the new castle, the story's over. The horse would have resolved all problems. And in this particular story, what I like about it is the princess is more, I hate to use the word aggressive, but she's more aggressive at a final stage. Once she learns of her qualities and she matures and she understands where she's gone wrong and admits she's gone wrong, then she herself solves her problem. And that's the point of the story. You can't really rely on others to solve your problems. So that's one takeaway of the story. Going back to the chambermaid, the antagonist, again, like I said, she becomes more and more antagonistic throughout the course of the story. At first, she's just rude, very blunt. She refuses to be a servant. Now, in that one little statement there, that's an act of rebellion. The other thing that's crucial, she actually tells the princess at one point, dismount. Oh, I'm sorry, here it is. The chambermaid says haughtily, resentfully, if you want a drink, get it yourself. I won't be your servant. For a person of lower class to address someone of upper class in this fashion, it is denying that the class structure exists. This in itself, talking to a royal in this fashion, would have your head cut off. An individual would have their head cut off. The children hearing this story know this is an act of rebellion. Okay? This little bitty flash of independence shows a horrible rebellion. Now, in America, we probably, a child wouldn't pick up on that quite as quickly. We tend to pride in our sense of independence and free thought in the modern world. But be that as it may, we're talking about the 1800s, and the story's referring to a medieval time period. Okay. The other thing that's really vital to pick up on about this scene, okay, the king's daughter, the princess, is actually going to dismount and drink from the water that's on the ground and not from a cup. So this is another violence that the chambermaid is showing to the princess, at the princess. She's forcing a noble person to act as an animal, getting on their hands and knees and drinking from a creek. Royals are not supposed to step on the ground, the average walking ground that a person treads on. They're supposed to walk on the red carpet. So that's where you get those red carpet concepts for celebrities. You're saying they're higher than the average person. So we should be honoring wherever they step. Okay. Now, at one point of the story, the mother had given the princess a magic cloth with 3 drops of her own blood. This is royal blood. It is protecting the princess. That's why at the very beginning stages of the story, the chambermaid can't take action or do anything more than just be harsh and rude. As soon as the princess loses that kerchief with the 3 drops of blood, however, okay, that's when the whole strategy of the chambermaid shifts, and that's when she forces the princess to sit on the nag, the ugly horse. The chambermaid now gets on Falada, the magic horse, and they've changed clothes. So the chambermaid is now what one would refer to as the false bride. The princess is now referred to as the true bride. This formula in fairy tale stories is quite common. You'll see it in a lot of different areas of Europe. So they get to the court, and no one questions why the plain-looking girl in the rich-looking clothing is the princess, and why the beautiful girl traveling with the chambermaid is the working-class individual. When she's questioned about the beauty of the princess / true bride, the false bride chambermaid responds, "I picked her up on my way for a companion. Give the girl some work to do. She won't stand idly by." Notice the tone of voice here is not at all meek and quiet and polite. Furthermore, the chambermaid is addressing this comment to the old king. She's not showing respect to a higher authority. So again, she's moved up a notch of antagonistic behavior. Consequently, what's going to happen? The princess now becomes the goose girl. As the goose girl, this is where the princess learns how she should have been acting all along. It's a slow process. You're going to have the scene of the wind blowing off Conrad's hat 3 times, but it's confirming that the princess has gained the knowledge or the foresight enough to use her magic. And she does know magic. She knows white magic. A main thing to keep in mind, whenever a character harms themselves as a sacrifice in order to aid somebody else, that's white magic. Whereas the black magic aspect is if you harm somebody else in order to cause a magical occurrence. That's black magic. Like cutting someone's hair and burning it, that's black magic. Whereas, like with the mother, when she has a kerchief and she pricks her fingers and drops 3 blood drops on it as a protection for the princess, that's white magic. So in this particular case, with the princess, true bride, goose girl, 3 titles, reciting this little poem, pulling out the wind to knock off the hat of Conrad, that's white magic. She's not doing anything violent. She's not hurting him. She's just causing the wind to blow the hat down the road. And it happens 3 times. She's also passing by the head of Falada. So that's a major scene. Falada, once he gets his head cut off, the magic still is operating. He can talk as a head, just simply as a head. And so he's nailed into the gateway of the court. he is acting as a constant reminder of what the princess had at one time. He's like a guilty conscience. So that's why he's repeating 3 times to her, alas, young queen passing by, if this your mother knew, her heart would break in two. Now, I've had students make comments in regards to the actions of the false bride. Again, you got to keep in mind we're spreading out the events and extending the details in order for a time period that the princess, true bride, Goose Girl can learn who she is, gain a sense of identity, go through that transformation process as the protagonist. So consequently, looking back, one excuse for the chambermaid false bride, by having the king give her something to do, the princess, the chambermaid is seeing the princess lowered in stature. She's being taken from the height of a princess in a royal castle of pure security and dropped down to the lowest of the low, which is a goose girl. There's no other profession in a small kingdom beneath that. You'd be homeless. Young kids usually are tending animals. Okay. So that's the primary reason for the antagonist's actions. The chambermaid has to see the princess in misery, has to know the princess is having a harsh life. It's all an act of revenge. Okay, now, so the old king of the new kingdom has seen the talking horse head. He's seen the princess recite these lyrics and cause the wind to blow. He sees what's happening. So he has a clearer understanding of the details, but what he doesn't have confirmed for him, that the princess is actually the true bride. Okay, he's had no indication of why to question that. All he knows is this beautiful girl who's operating as a goose girl has magic. So he's going to be a detective. He's going to dig deeper. He's not going to jump to rash conclusions. Okay, that's not a quality you want in a ruler. You want to craftily, carefully choose your steps. Use your resources. So when the princess true bride refuses to acknowledge anything, she says, I'm not allowed to tell you, nor can I reveal my sorrows to any human being, for I have sworn under the open heaven not to do so, and if I had not so sworn, I would have been killed. Okay. But the king is not going to leave her no peace, as it says here. He's going to pester her and pester her and pester. Finally, he comes up with an idea, and I always love this idea of the story. It reminds me of Hansel and Gretel, but it's going to twist it in a new way, total different direction. The king says, if you will not tell me anything, then tell your sorrows to the iron stove there. So the princess promptly crawls into the iron stove. Now, this is a logic of these stories. It's dream logic. It's not logical. It's psychological. You just accept it for what it is. And like the princess, true bride, she doesn't question why she has to do this. This is the loophole of her oath that she's sworn not to reveal anything, because she's not, it says she swore she would not reveal sorrows to any human being. So in this case, she's revealing her sorrows to the stove, and therefore she can confess It's just like a confessional. She'll admit what her mistakes were. And so she says, at this point, this is her epiphany moment, her major shift in reality and understanding of herself. Here I sit, abandoned by the whole world. Although I am the daughter of a king, a false chambermaid forced me to take off my royal clothes, and she has taken my place with my bridegroom. Now I have to do common work as a goose girl. If my mother knew this, her heart would break in two. And that's her acknowledgement of the situation. She fully understands what's happened. Now the king hears this, gives her royal clothes, and anybody who sees her at this state is marveled by how beautiful she is. She's more beautiful than she was before. She's gained her reward. The bridegroom is summoned, the prince, and it's revealed to him that the chambermaid is the wrong bride, and he looks at the true bride, who's more beautiful, of course, and he just promptly says, great, I'm madly in love. I'll take her. She's better than the first. Okay. It says the young king rejoiced with all his heart when he saw her beauty and virtue. So as it is with these type of stories, there's going to be another feast. In this feast, they have yet to take any action against the chambermaid. So in a manner of speaking, you're innocent until proven guilty. In this particular case, the chambermaid is at the feast. The princess, true bride, is at the feast. And the king is going to ask the chambermaid, what would she do if she was under the same situations? So the way to play this out in your head, the manner the king is asking, see, it says here it's a riddle, but the manner the king is asking the question, a young child knows instantly what he's referring to, but the chambermaid does not. She's assuming he's probably referring to the goose girl. And that one little mistake reveals the chambermaid, false bride, her true indications and how horrible she would be as a royal. She has no understanding of what it's to be in that capacity of the structure of class, whereas the princess would. So as it says here, the king asks what punishment a person deserved who had deceived her master in such and such a manner. And then he relates the whole story of the goose girl, asking finally, what sentence does such a person deserve? So in this case, the antagonist. What does the antagonist deserve in this type of situation? And in the perfect, violent, I say perfect, in the violent response, the false bride says, she deserves no better fate than to be stripped stark naked and put in a barrel that is studded inside with sharp nails. 2 white horses should be hitched to it, and they should drag her along through one street after another until she is dead. A very gruesome and actually, sadly, historically accurate medieval torture. So the old king recognizes by that statement that the chambermaid is not an adequate royal, and he says, you are the one, you are the criminal, and you have pronounced your own sentence, thus it shall be done to you. And then you have the antagonist taken out of the equation. But one logic to keep in mind here, the king technically has not passed sentence on the chambermaid false bride. She has done it to herself. So in this regard, the morality of the king is still intact. He's still a good ruler. He's still a admirable person of judgment and quality, moral quality. Okay. So the sentence is carried out. The antagonist is taken out of the question. And in one of the rare moments of a feminist type of attitude, notice how it closes out. The young king marries his true bride, and both of them rule over the kingdom in peace and happiness. And one of the ideas to keep in mind, the prince is not exactly, the young king is not exactly the brightest match in the box. He's a little dumb. He reacts to pretty pictures, and he doesn't question in the fashion that his father does. He needs help. He needs guidance. So in that sense, that's why it's stressed that both of them are ruling over the kingdom in peace and happiness. It's without an adequate partner, the young king, can't function adequately. Okay. That's a breakdown of the fairy tale formula. You've got the violence, you got the happily ever after, you got the easily identified protagonist, antagonist, you've got the epiphany, the psychological transformation, so it all falls into place. I'll be creating a third video over the weekend, so be on the lookout for that. I am going to create a discussion board. Basically, all I want you to do is to provide one for you. What was the one moment in the story that surprised you the most? What one element in the story stands out as a moment of taking children's literature in a new direction? Okay. So again, be safe, and I'll talk to you all later.